Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. In Season 2 of Hacks and Hobbies, we're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life. We want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. In this episode, I get to speak with Bo Wernick. He's the CEO and Chief Engineer at Theta Composites. How did I meet Bo? Well, I am part of NoVA Labs at MakerSpace here in Reston, Virginia. And I was on the Slack channel. I was like, hey, I would love to interview anybody who's interested and in the space of hacking things together and making the passion of their hobbies and building stuff. And Bo stepped forward, and as I learned on the conversation with him last week, he is a design engineer, a business developer, and specializing in composite structures and autonomous systems. And that's one of the things that his company does. And I was like totally blown away, because these are some of the things that I've dreamt of for the past 4 or 5 years, looking to build an Iron Man suit with foam core, and then started looking at 3D printers, and then they're all Kickstarter, so you have to wait like 6 months. But anyways, in a makerspace, they already have 3D printers. So I'm super excited and happy to have Bo come and be a guest on that podcast. Bo, thank you so much for your time and coming out to the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it was funny. You went out in our Slack channel and said, hey, is anybody who wants to do this? And I'm like, I'm an anybody that likes to talk about cool stuff. And I looked up your information, and I think this is a great channel for people that are just interested in all kinds of creativity, problem solving, and learning. So I'm happy to be part of it. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I really aspire to what you're doing. What we do here is very similar to a podcast, but in real life. We're
in real life, exactly right. You don't just talk about it anymore. You're actually doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we all have the same passion for the same stuff in terms of sharing and learning and building neat, wild things, whatever.
Nice.
So yeah, let's see where this takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I'm absolutely passionate about is to learn the journey and the story of our guests. And since this is season 2 of the podcast, and season 1, I just focused on all of the hobbies that I was passionate about and sharing that with the world. In season 2, I'm bringing on other hobbyists, other hackers, other entrepreneurs, and crazy ones just like me, and asking them, where did their journey start from, and how they got to where they are today, and how what they're doing today is what's passionate for them. So, and that's one of the reasons. So that's just to get, it's like an origin story basically, right? And then we'll have the second edition where we go to, now we've already seen that origin story of Iron Man or Thor or Captain America. Now what's happening in the next? So that will be future. Hopefully, maybe we'll get there, in season 3. But that's some of the things that I'm passionate about and wanted to learn more.
Sure.
So So tell me, how you began into the journey of running your own composites company.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring up Iron Man. I was stuck in a cave. Those are hard origin stories to match up. So let's start at the beginning, right? So my mom is an artist and an art teacher at like middle schools and things, and she also had a degree and a career in art. And my dad is an engineer. And so you mix those together and you get me and my sister who, interestingly, I'm an engineer who's very creative, and my sister is a creative who's got a pretty good background in technical. So like she works for Pixar and Disney doing
oh my God.
graphics animation, right? So she's on a computer, and then I'm on a computer doing like drones and whatnot, and trying to human interface, so that when people use a drone, it's not like some complex glued together solution, but like something that's fairly elegant and operates like you'd expect it to. And so we're kind of coming from the opposite ends of this combination spectrum, which is cool. And at the end of the day, 99% of our work is essentially sitting on a computer in front of some 3D modeling program.
Yeah.
Really is a lot of crossover after all.
That is so cool. And it was cool, right? Being in a makerspace, once you've designed that model, then you go to actually produce it in a in a 3D printer or a CNC mill or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. My sister lives out in California, in LA,
Hmm.
and she works with these Hollywood type studios. And so we didn't see each other. Like, I don't hang out with her every day. I see her
Yeah.
for holidays and whatever, vacations and stuff. And
Mhm.
so I hadn't ever seen her office, and she had never seen mine. And at
Yeah.
one point, I was getting married, and so she flew out here for the wedding, and I had flown up a couple weeks before to visit her and introduce my wife to the family who couldn't make it out to the
Hmm.
wedding. And so we got to see each other's offices for the first time. And I'll tell you, the office at Pixar is
Hmm.
almost exactly like NoVA Labs. I'm looking around and I'm like, look at all this 3D printed stuff. You got 3D printers going like crazy. But it's just kind of hanging out and talking about crazy ideas that would be neat to see. And like,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we do. And it's so
I
funny
know.
that, like,
That's
as different
amazing.
as we are as people and our skill sets and our career paths, we kind of are the same exact job.
Hmm.
So
That's
that's the origin story, and I've always been really into airplanes, and so that's kind of been my gig. Although I'll tell you, I don't know how much time you want to spend on origin stories, but I've got this incredible eclectic history of working at crazy awesome jobs and having
hmm
great experiences, and so getting to where I am today as an engineer and a business owner was a long and adventurous journey
yeah.
through working at an eBay store and an African wild animal park and a horse ranch and
Wow.
all kinds of wild stuff. Uh, but here I am now. I worked
That's
aerospace for about 10 years,
hmm
credentials after college, and I got the great opportunity to work at a company called Aurora Flight Sciences, which
hmm
did research and development aircraft, mostly for the military. So all these kind of cutting edge X-plane, super secret, high capability projects, and most of them were autonomous drone based. So really,
Wow.
really cool things that we actually all got to build and fly.
Yeah.
Great career. And I eventually wanted to get into the commercial side. And those are very different markets, making products for people to buy versus
Mhm.
making a research project to prove something to NASA.
Yeah.
So that doesn't transition so easily if you're a business going from one
No.
to the other. So I started my own gig, and I started doing commercial drone parts for startups that were selling new drones or new drone equipment,
Mhm.
and kind of grown from there.
That is so cool, man. I've absolutely been on the fence to get a drone. And one of the reasons that I haven't gotten a drone is because of the area we live in. We're close to,
FRZ.
sorry?
You're in the flight restriction zone.
Yeah, we're in the flight restriction zone, and it's like, there's no point in even investing any time or dime into flying, buying a drone and then learning how to fly it. I mean,
I wouldn't go that far. So I'm
no,
a strong
okay.
drone advocate, and I definitely recognize the issues, and I teach these classes at universities and work with the FAA and all this stuff. So
Mhm.
very familiar with the pros and cons and
Okay.
all that. But the reality is, you can get a drone for under $100. It's a ton of fun. You can fly it indoors. You can take it outside the FRZ, which is like half an hour drive to some flying field somewhere with a
Mhm.
bunch of other people that fly drones, and you can learn, you can play, and that's a ton of fun. And it's if you can't ride a bicycle right outside your apartment door, you have to walk it down the street. But then you can
Yeah,
ride anywhere and do anything. It's still
exactly.
worth having if you're into
Oh, yeah.
that. So
No, no,
I'd say consider
I
it.
totally get it. I do have drones. I have a tiny drone that I fly in the house. I've had several the Saiteki helicopters with the dual
Mm-hmm.
propeller. So I've had several of those. There's some even boxed up. I even bought a helicopter with a elevated trim control and everything. I never got to get that stupid thing off the ground. It's still sitting in the box.
Oh no! Well,
And
when you come out here, you got to bring it. And
I will definitely be bringing it, man. So when I was living in Colorado, I was like, I totally want to get into drones, and I even met up with several drone meetups, and I saw the 6 propeller, the 8 propeller,
yep.
and it was a ton of fun watching these guys fly their drones. And I absolutely, would love to get one, like one of the Inspire ones or Inspire twos, and
Mm-hmm.
shoot some video following cars. So my neighbor, he said that he has an Inspire one, and he used to do a lot of drone footage back in Indiana. But being in this area, he's like, there's a lot of restrictions. So if there's something that I can point him to, like even bring him to, NoVA Labs and have him talk to you, I'm sure that he can probably find, ways to get back into that same business that he was doing before.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I'm always open to a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I have an Inspire 1, an Inspire 2, a Matrice, and a Mavic. And those are all the DJI products.
Yeah.
Newer ones, and they're fantastic. A little pricey, and they do have flight restriction awareness. So if you take it too close to DC, it won't take off. It won't fly.
Yeah.
So there's that. A lot of the other stuff that's out there, like the unique product, I think there's an H520 or something. That's a great system, and that one doesn't have any of the restrictions. So technically, it'll break the law for better or for worse.
It'll let you break the law. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everything within moderation, right? I mean,
yes.
We all see it a little bit sometimes, and it's kind of like understood that's within reason. Drones are somewhat similar to that. We're outside the FRZ here, so we're actually allowed to fly, and we've got registrations and licenses and so forth. So we do all the paperwork and file all the forms and get it all done. And we teach classes here if people want to be legit in terms of what they need to do.
Nice.
Realistically, the FAA is going from manned aircraft, which have a reasonable expectation of safety, and then trying to scale it down to like hobby RC planes, and they just don't scale. Those levels of rules don't scale well at the micro level. So it's still pretty arduous. I mean, for the average person who's used to being able to go to the store and buy a thing and then go use it, right? Like, can you imagine if you bought a flat screen TV from Costco or something, and you had like 25 pages of government forms and a test you had to take at a center, and like,
oh my god, yeah, that's
flight laws. Every time you turn the TV on or off, you have to do a full inspection. Like, it's crazy.
That would be pretty painful. Like, you know what? I'm just not gonna watch TV anymore.
Right? You have to like schedule TV time around when you have like an hour of build up and tear down, and at the end of the day, no one's TV ends up like crashing into their neighbor's car.
No, that's true.
Okay, but that's the deal, right? I mean, the rules don't scale well, so they're over conservative. But realistically, the hardest part about this drone issue is that the people who want to follow the rules are punished by having all these rules to follow, and the people that don't follow the rules just do whatever they want anyway, and they're the ones that get caught on TV like flying it over a motorcade or something. So it's very similar to some other Second Amendment type discussions people have. I think at the end of the day, drones aren't doing real damage anywhere, so a lot of it is kind of perceived damage. So I'm not concerned about it in terms of, is this a crisis or anything?
Okay.
So it'll get figured out, and people for the most part have a sense of self-preservation. Plus, drones are still expensive, right?
Yes, they're still expensive.
If you screw up with them, you don't get the drone back.
That's right. That is correct. So my brother in California, he has a Zhiyun, and he was flying that when I was visiting, and I was like, dude, this is so cool. Got this dedicated controller. So that was pretty awesome. And drones are pretty amazing in what you can do with them. Like, I think somewhere I read that Amazon was planning on using drones for like food delivery even. It's like interesting. Is the food still hot?
I don't put a whole lot of stake in it. I think that not to be too direct of a pun.
No,
that was intentional, but I'll take it. But realistically, there's not a whole lot of both value proposition and physics reality. I mean, there's so much lower hanging fruit that it's ridiculous. Like a ground-based robot is a fantastic idea to solve all the same issues, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Last mile delivery and repeatable process and automation, all these things that they're trying to do with drones, you can do with a ground robot way easier and faster and cost effective and all that. So, and that's happening too. They're just not as flashy. Like a drone carrying a pizza is like, whoa. So like newspapers and TV shows will put that on, but like a little robot that looks like R2-D2 with like a pizza in him, it's just kind of silly.
Yeah.
It's like,
so what was really interesting was, so I think Amazon might, I mean, Amazon has to make money if they were to do that. But I think an area that they were testing drone delivery was with organs, like people who need transplants for organs. They're like,
Yeah.
we can deliver this organ real quickly with a drone with a straight line of sight, and don't have to worry about getting stuck in traffic and stuff like that. So I think they were running some tests in that area.
Yeah, that's one of the companies I work with.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Look
it's
at that. I already am.
hey, if it's drones, I got my hands in it. Stay away.
Sorry, come again?
I said if it's got drones in it, I am all over it. I can't stay away from these things. And
Nice.
hanging out somewhere, let's say I'm on the metro, right?
Uh-huh.
And I hear someone talk about drones, like I'll just cozy on up like I know them.
Like, yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's great to have passions. Very few of us in this world are so lucky to be able to do what we love
That's
for a
true.
living. So that's great. And hey, if you can't find happiness where you can, then what's the point? So
Exactly.
yeah, maybe on the subways talking about drones, and who knows where it'll take you. One day you'll be delivering a heart through the air.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. Very, very true. And I try. I mean, I don't travel by subway as much. Uh, Otherwise, I'd be picking up conversations with people as well on different topics. And I have gotten a little more courageous and pick topics and talk to people about stuff, but I don't have those public opportunities as much as you might, because you're right in the center of the makerspace,
Yeah,
talking with people and whatnot.
yeah, yeah. The makerspace here is very, we say community oriented, and I
Yes.
don't know if people really get what that means, but if you could imagine like not very community oriented would be like a gym where like you go and you do your thing and you don't really go there to make friends and like
Yeah,
start talking to the person on the next treadmill. It's kind of weird. It's like
it is.
right? And then there's like a pure social club, which would be like, I don't know, a fraternity or something, right? So we're like we're not quite in the middle. We're a little more towards a social club here.
Hmm.
Hopefully, any conversation is a conversation you can join. So,
Nice.
whenever you're working on something and it's cool, people will come over and talk to you, and you can do the same with other people's projects. And everyone's a sharer, if not an oversharer.
Yeah.
And it's a very cool place to make connections.
Yeah, so I took my son over to the NoVA Labs as well. I was like, you're coming with me and taking this green class. And of course, it's a long, there's a long sitting in the chair and listening about all the rules. And he's 9 years old. So it's like, is this all we're gonna do this whole time? I was like, no, we're gonna go visit the different areas and check them out. So then towards the end, when we were all done, there's all these 3D models in the front. And he's like, "Oh, can I stay here for a little longer? I just want to play with some of this stuff." And then what's his? I can't remember. I think there's some gentleman who built the AT-AT with the wooden AT&T.
His name's David.
David, right? So he's working on this catapult.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go, one catapult.
Yeah, so Muhammad looks at it and he's like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. How do you work it?" So then David's explaining to him, how this whole thing works. He's gonna throw the ball over. He's like, "Oh," so he's like totally into it, and so that was really cool.
Yeah, great. Yeah, David's a cool cat. His thing. So everyone's got the thing, right? Like obviously I'm a drone guy, but
Mhm.
David's thing is making projects that are really cool, like almost art pieces, but
Mhm.
also like science tutorial pieces.
Yeah.
Like makes these things all the time and then takes them on this road show with a couple friends where they do like science fairs and
Oh,
festivals and things. So yeah, it's like to illustrate verbally to your listeners what this is.
yeah.
So imagine a catapult that was like self-reloading, right? So it's got like a little winch motor type thing and it pulls itself back and the little ball comes from a hopper and puts it in there and then it launches it, right? Okay, that's pretty simple to imagine. Well, so now imagine on the other side where that ball is landing, there's another catapult and the ball lands in the hopper of that catapult. So they're essentially playing catch and they're
Mhm.
shooting back and forth. Now you add like 4 more of those, so there's 6, and they're each shooting across from each other,
Yeah.
crossing over in the middle, right? Like in a
Yeah.
big circle. And
Mhm.
now you put the whole thing on a rotating platen. And so this whole thing spins around while these catapults shoot back and forth at each other, like some kind of marble, like fountain at the hotel in Vegas kind of thing. It's
Oh.
visuals.
So if these catapults are shooting these little balls across, do they ever crash in each other?
So there's everything that you can imagine a
Yeah.
hypothetical scenario where it fails, it does.
Yes.
He's got to overcome every problem you can imagine. That he kind of knew getting into it, like there's going to be all kinds of like the balls won't land in the same spot every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
How do I get it so that if they fall, they don't roll down the street? Now I've only got 2 balls left after a minute. So he had to solve all these problems, and he's gotten pretty good at getting it adjusted and dialed in. And
Yeah.
it's funny because the thing that makes that project and all of his projects really interesting and great for NoVA Labs is that he builds them here, kind of conceives them, starts building them, tests them, and they're neat. They're so visually neat. They're designed to be visually neat. So people are coming over every 5 minutes while he's working. He probably spends for a 3-hour session when he's here. He comes in for about 3 hours once a week. He probably spends an hour and a half or 2 hours explaining over and over and over again to every person who walks by what it is. And I think that's part of the reason he builds these things.
Yeah, because
He loves to share.
hmm and that's one of the reasons I had mentioned earlier. It'd be really cool if there was a NoVA Labs podcast, and every week we're talking about we're talking to a different creator, and if it got crazy enough, we could even do it daily. Where daily we're talking, one day we're talking all the woodworking members, and the next day we're talking about metal, next day robotics, drones, all these cool things. So it could, like, because I know there's a calendar where there's set dates on which teams meet, or which open hours they have on each of the days. I think it would be really cool if there was a podcast level, or it's like a live radio show happening as well. I think that would be
Yeah,
really
it
fun.
sounds like a lot of work, but an awesome idea.
No, because there are some platforms that will enable like live, so there's minimal editing because
Mhm.
it's all happening now. It's done. It's a produced episode, it's just like a radio show, and now it's up and available for people to listen in the future.
Yeah, yeah. I used Anchor for a while for doing
Hmm.
podcasts, and it was very similar to that. It has this like quasi editing thing where you have like a mixing board,
Yeah,
and you essentially edit it while you're doing it. So you're like adding sounds and cutting
yeah.
and piecing sound files together. It's pretty cool. If you get good at it, you essentially can spend the 1 hour discussion
Oh
and
yeah,
have it done at the end and edited. So it's
absolutely.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I use Anchor myself for hosting my podcast, and it's been great. They recently got purchased by Spotify,
Mhm.
and Spotify has been adding some really cool features um, to the platform, and it's been pretty good.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, people here love to share, and we'd love to be able to reach out more with the media. I don't know if you've done a podcast about Nova Lab in the past,
I
but
have not.
yeah, I
This
guess
is
I
the
give you
first.
like a 30-second spiel for your
Oh,
listeners.
absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So he keeps saying Nova Labs and MakerSpace, and everyone has a different level of familiarity with this concept. So if you've never heard of any of this before, you're like, what is this weird Disneyland of people he's talking about? It's like Willy Wonka's factory.
Yeah.
Um, so essentially what it is a facility where people pay a monthly membership to come and hang out like a clubhouse, but it also has a tons of tools. And then we take turns volunteering to teach each other classes about whatever it is we know about. So someone who's here is a woodworker. They teach about how to use the saws and woodworking tools in the back. And somebody else here is a fine art painter, and so they teach about how to, do whatever project they're doing. And so it covers this huge gamut from like cybersecurity and hacking
Mm.
to arts and crafts and all kinds of things. And we're open to everything. We recently got blacksmithing and casting, so people have forges in the back now.
Wow.
And then, people come in sometimes and they say, hey, do you guys have like places where we can build sets for our plays or like theater plays? Like,
Hmm.
no, but we could. Let's start doing that. So yeah,
Nice.
we're constantly growing and changing, and it's about 10,000 square feet. We've got about half of that is machine shop, and half of it is kind of open office space and light equipment like electronics and 3D printing. So people come in, they do what they do. I run a business out of here. Some people are kind of weekly regulars during whatever scheduled Monday night shop night thing they come to. And some
Mhm.
people just come because they don't want to spend $500 on tools and store them in
Yeah.
their house, and they just show up whenever they need a table saw.
Yeah. And so I discovered NoVA Labs because my brother-in-law's oh, sorry, my brother's brother-in-law. He's a he's a maker himself, and he utilizes his makerspace out in California. And I
Which
was
one?
in California.
You know which
Not,
makerspace?
no, I'm not sure the name of the makerspace.
Where does he live?
He lives in Stanford. No, close to Stanford or Fresno area.
Okay.
I cannot remember.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
Yeah. So he's built like fidget spinners using a laser cutter, and he's made fidget spinners using plastic and as well as like wooden objects to hold your headphones, at your desk. And he's got all these cool projects, either 3D printed or laser cutted. And I was like, dude, this is super awesome. He's like, yeah, dude, I just go to this makerspace and they have all these tools. I was like, what is a makerspace?
Yeah.
And then I searched for a makerspace around here. And at the time I was working in Rockwell, and there's not much out there. So I was like, and then I found NoVA Labs close to home in Reston. And I was like, oh my God, I need to go visit. I need to go visit. So for the longest time, I've been wanting to, actually I did come in and visited on a woodworking open night. And I talked to a gentleman, and he's like, yeah, dude, this is really cool. You can come use his tools. And then for at least 2 years, I've been wanting to get the green orientation class. And then finally I did it last week because I saw some opening. I was like, you're not going football today because they canceled his practice. So I was like, let's go to NoVA Labs. So he
Nice.
was super excited. And
Cool. Yeah, and it's funny. The family that makes together stays together. We have
yes.
a family membership, and essentially, you can bring your family for free. Is what it accounts to.
Yeah.
You get so much more entrenched in this if you can all come together and do it together. And it's kind of like gym buddies, right? If you've ever
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
had an opportunity to go to the gym with a friend, like
Mm-hmm.
your work schedules overlap on Tuesdays or something, and it's like, all right, that'll be a good day after work. You're just way more likely to go, and
Absolutely.
make it happen. So it's fantastic.
You
Plus,
know,
it's great to bring young people in.
oh
And
yeah, absolutely. And he loves making stuff. He when the Lego Voltron model came out, I was like, I'm getting this for my son because he's been watching Voltron for the past 4 years or 3 years or something. He's like totally psyched about it. So as soon as the model came out, I got it, and he built the whole thing himself.
that's cool.
He's like, he hadn't even turned 9 yet, but he'd finished the whole thing. So he loves building Legos. He loves coming up with different ways to experiment. And we were actually going strawberry picking 2 weeks ago in Ashburn, and I messaged a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be passing by your place. He's like, today is Makerspace Day, kids day at Makerspace at the library. I was like, oh really? So we got to meet him there, and then my son, he used TikTok CAD or something, and he built Thor's Stormbreaker hammer.
Uh-huh.
And then so we had that 3D printed there. And I was like, dude, we have 3D printing space right here at NoVA Labs. So one of the cool things about, I guess, at the library is that you can give them the model and then come back a later day when they get it printed. But one thing that I noticed, because nobody's here overnight at NoVA Labs, so you have to stay there while your model is being printed, correct?
Yeah, for the most part, that's a general rule we put in place.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. So I was like, I'm going to bring him here so he can get more involved into what I'm passionate about. And what's funny is that Hacks and Hobbies is like literally everything that NoVA Labs is about. It's like a synergy that got created somehow without proper introduction, I guess, in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, it is a very cool place, and it's one of many. Like you said, your brother's brother-in-law goes to one out in California. There's probably 200 or 300 large maker spaces in the U.S. probably 10 times that around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of small community ones, like the one you're talking about in that library, that have access to 3D printers and some educational programming, especially for kids.
Yeah.
So, I would say wherever you are, you've probably got access to some form of a maker community, and everyone should at least check it out and know about it, because there's so many opportunities to learn and to do projects. And I think in the biggest sense of the picture, I think one of the reasons makerspaces are around now, because there's nothing magic about a makerspace. It could have existed 100 years ago, right?
Oh yeah.
A blacksmithery space or whatever it would have been. But I think it's more now, because now we're so disconnected from the manufacturing process in our everyday lives. We don't even have things with buttons on them anymore. They're all touch screens. And so everything is so digital. It feels so synthetic that, people want to be able to make something with their hands. They want to fix things. They want to know how things work. They want to kind of take the reins back from the speed of the way the world is moving around them.
Yeah.
I think this is a really good way to feel empowered to control the world around you, is being able to do things like fix stuff when it breaks, or understand why things work, and how to solve problems. There's all kinds of programs about stuff called physical literacy, where kids today are growing up in a world where, like, they've never touched a screwdriver, and they've never glued two pieces of paper together. Like, it's just so digital. And I think that's a big part of why it's popular now. And a lot of people who come in here are in the digital space, a lot of people in IT and software development, and they're like, I just want to make something with my hand. I just want to be able to set something on a desk and say, I did a real physical thing today.
Absolutely. And what's crazy is that I am constantly thinking of different projects and bringing the source materials. I at least have 10 different projects that I'm working on and off. Like, I'm trying to build an LED table with all these LED lights. So it will kind of act like a key light, but I've got to solder all these LED pieces together. Or, I mean, it was a strip, and I cut them up so I could lay them in a panel space. So I've got that going on. I've got like so many different things. My mind is just expanding from all of this stuff.
Yep.
And my wife's like, you just got to pick one and just do it, and then go to the next one. It's like, no, but this is so exciting.
Yep. I know, it's so funny. And, inspiration is not something you can control, right? It's not like real procedural process. And so it's like, you'll be working on one thing, and then you'll see a TV show or someone else's project, or it'll give you an idea for some other thing, and you're constantly jumping around.
Yeah.
It's not a job, right? There's no bosses here. We like to say all the time, there's no bosses here. It's partially because it's an all volunteer space. There's no employees at all. It's nice because you come here and no one tells you have a deadline, and no one tells you have to do it this way. It's like, you want to build a boat out of cardboard and then go float it in the river. Go for it. Yeah. And halfway through you change your mind and now you want to do something else. That's cool too. So we've got all kinds of things, and we do projects that do have some level of structure and conclusion. And I obviously run a business, so I do have deadlines.
Yeah, you gotta have
budgets and stuff. But we do things like, there's a club here that does parades. So there was one up in Baltimore they just did called the Kinetic Sculpture Parade.
Nice.
And you have to build a 5-person man-powered float. So you have to like pedal it or something.
Oh, wow.
And it has to go 15 miles down the parade route. And then it has to go like a few thousand feet in water in the harbor.
Wow.
So you have to build this giant multi-bicycle floating caravan thing. And you get all kinds of points based on like style and size and all this stuff. And it was wild. The thing we built was essentially 5 bicycles welded to a giant frame, covered in barrels. And then we somehow got our hands on a giant carousel horse. You can't just put a carousel horse all arbitrarily on a parade float. You need to like dust it up a bit. So we built these. Someone said, I'll build wings for it and it'll make it a Pegasus. And we're like, that sounds cool. It's like flying in a boat and now it looks like it flies. Well,
that's so cool.
He took it seriously. I guess he felt like, I don't want people judging me on some tiny wings. So bought like giant sheets of foam board, and he made these wings that are like 36 feet.
Oh my God.
So big. They were insane. Most of the complexity was about how do you make this thing fit in a truck, like a moving van. They were so big. And so he built all these things. They got wire reinforcements everywhere, and they did it. They took it through the whole parade that way. Now it's one more thing hanging on the ceiling of this place. These giant wings
I
on
think
this.
I noticed. I think I saw those wings.
Yeah, it was a trip. It was so cool.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
god.
that's the kind of stuff that happens here. And there's nobody to tell him like these wings need to be 36 feet, not an inch shorter. He was like, I'm going big or I'm going home.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. So I love just. I mean that's exactly what my brain looks like. Like all these ideas, all these things that I want to do, I want to create, and gotta have a space, gotta have the time and the passion to follow through and get those projects. I mean, you don't even have to, because everything you do, you're learning something new, and then you can put it all together and make something even better.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Well, I agree. Like there's no rule that you have to finish projects. You can always
Mhm.
jump around. And
Yeah.
half the project is a full learning experience nonetheless.
Mhm.
But that being said, there's something that's really satisfying and encouraging about finishing a project. And a
Oh,
lot of projects don't get finished because there's some hard part that's kind of a bottleneck or
mhm.
expensive or whatever reason the project doesn't get finished. And over time, those start to wear on you. I mean, as much
Yes.
fun as it is, it kind of feels like it's not as valuable of your time. And
Mhm.
to be honest, a finished project presents to the outside world so much better.
Oh,
You can always
absolutely.
tell people, yeah, it's half finished, but I learned a whole bunch. And they're going to go,
Mhm.
all right, way to spend your time using styrofoam. But when you do it and you finish it, people are
Yes.
impressed, especially if you really went above and beyond and did something that, yeah, okay, you built your own IKEA furniture from the instructions. That's cool. People,
Mhm.
yeah, they're expected to do that.
Yeah.
But to build a wind turbine from scratch, that's
Mhm.
like extraordinary. And people think to themselves, that's not something a person can do, an average person with no experience can
Oh,
do.
that's
But
interesting.
you really can. And to prove it to people by doing it, it says a lot about what's possible in the world, and it says a lot about who you are as a person. And that feels so
Nice.
good. That keeps you going.
No, you're absolutely right. And so yesterday I was out in Virginia Beach, and then I came back and I was like, I want to finish some of this stuff. And it was like midnight, and I was like, I can't really sleep because I've been on 2 monster drinks during my drive, right? Like I can't sleep. So I went to my workshop and I was like, all right, I need to put legs on this little bench that I made. I've had these seat cushions left over from, they were basically the chairs, that the dining chairs were under warranty. So they replaced, because the leather had torn, so they sent new seats for them. So now I've got these 5 seats sitting around. I was like, you know what? I can definitely turn it into a bench. So I connected them. Underneath, I put 2 pieces of plank wood, screwed them down, and now this is a long piece of bench. So I was like, how am I going to build legs underneath it? And then I had these IKEA legs from this desktop furniture lying around. I was like, this would fit perfectly. Actually, I was doing another project in my office. I'm just moving things around, and I wanted to add a leaf to the end of my table to make it longer. And that thing had these legs. So I took the legs off, and I'm looking at the legs. I was like, these would be perfect for the bench that I was creating for the kids.
There you go.
So I finished like 3 different projects just between midnight to like 3 a.m. It's like, all right, I'm going to go sleep for an hour.
The witching hour. That's where the magic happens.
Yes, it
I
is.
think part of the magic of getting stuff done at like midnight and later is that if you're so tired, like, when you're drunk, you don't take things as seriously.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
if you had to like paint a picture and you were sober, you'd be like, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
good enough. But if you're drunk, you're like, boom, I did it. I nailed it. It's awesome. And so like being able to finish a project is kind of getting over your perfectionism. And
Yes.
when it's really late, it's just like, screw it. It's good enough. And then the next day you're like, oh, it actually is good
It's
enough.
not
I'm
too
glad
bad.
it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes
Nice.
you need that
Nice.
uh, sleep
Cool, man.
deprivation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do find a lot of joy when I'm, finished with a project. Then I like, honey, look, I made this. And some of the things that I've been building is like PVC pipes put together into a chair. And then now I'm like knitting a chair, seating area with like rope.
Why not, right?
Why not? And because I was like, hey, how do you do this? I look on YouTube, and this guy's like, okay, this is how you wrap it. And it's really intricate. Like you got to have taut, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And I'm just watching this guy make a chair out of this material. I can't remember the name of the material, but it's probably like material that you use for bow and arrow, but it's like the string part maybe.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Anyways, it was really cool, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this. And so now I've got a bunch of PVC pipe chairs sitting around that are halfway done because it takes so much time.
Yeah.
Everything takes so much
I
time.
think that's why it's got to be a passion, right? Because
Yes.
people come in here sometimes and they get it in their head that like companies that sell things are making a profit and that's why they cost what they cost. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're like, I don't want to spend this much money for a kitchen sink. I want to make one myself. It's like, look,
Exactly.
if I paid you $1 an hour, this is still going to be a $1,200 sink. Like
Yes.
you don't have any idea how much time it takes to learn the skill,
Oh
to
yeah.
practice, and to make a thing, and then remake it if you didn't like the first one. Plus, the materials are expensive, and it's just a lot. You have to love doing it. It has to be your
Absolutely.
passion, right? I mean, when you go skiing and you pay $1,000 for a weekend of skiing, that's
Yeah.
not an investment. You're not planning on having a value proposition there, other
Yeah.
than it's
Mm-hmm.
valuable for your soul.
Exactly.
That's what this is too. And
Yeah.
a lot of times people come in here and they're not quite sure what to expect, or they heard there's a place here, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, "Yeah, I need a lamp for my apartment. I figured, why spend $20 at Walmart when I could just make one for free?" And you're like, "Whoa,
Well, you can
hey,
spend $20 to be here. First
I,
of
I,
all.
I got 2x4s and wire and an LED. We could definitely make one for
Yeah.
free, but if you
True.
don't have the skills to make it look good,
Yeah.
you're still going to spend an entire night making this $20 lamp that's going to look like garbage."
Exactly.
So
Yep.
yeah,
There's a thing to say. And so one of the ways that I really got into this was around Iron Man 2 time. It's like 2013 or 2012, I think. And I saw people were making Iron Man costumes. Like, oh my God, this is so cool. So I started looking up, and I'm looking at Papakura, and I'm looking up all the different ways you can cut paper.
yeah, like the origami ones. Yeah,
No, well, origami is you folding it, but Papakura is you're actually cutting paper in certain shapes, and then you have folds and valleys, and then you then glue those pieces together.
sure.
And it
It,
took
it
me,
looks it looks kind of folded, right? It's like a low
yeah,
poly. Kind of.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's got the poly look.
yeah,
So I made the handpiece, the glove part, and that took me at least 2 weeks, and it's all
yeah.
done with cardboard.
Oh man,
Okay, I need to find a way to do it faster. So the
yeah.
next,
Welcome to laser cutting. Your world is going to be shaken to its core.
I know. So the next thing I looked at was, okay, I can use foam core, then I don't need all this extra padding in it, or when I'm putting these pieces together. So using that, I was able to build an entire helmet using
Yeah,
8 millimeter or 10 millimeter thick foam. But then I still had to use an X-Acto knife to first trace it all out.
yeah,
Using a regular trace it all out. And now I've got to cut it. That took me another, couple nights, few nights. And I'm
yeah,
just, working at it. And it was really cool.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, all right, we need to get a 3D printer.
Well,
For the
3D printers
next
are really
Comic Con.
people.
For the
People
next,
like they know of 3D printing because it sounds cool, I guess, and everyone talks about it. But
it
it's
sounds cool,
slow.
right? It
Yeah,
is.
it's small parts, and it takes like dozens of hours to
Oh
make
my
any.
God.
Yeah, like to make a lamp would probably take 500 hours.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
And I was like, all right, we got to find 3D printers first. And okay, we found 3D printers. They're all Kickstarter projects right now because all the maker ones are, $2,000, $3,000. And
yeah,
I'm like, okay, now we got to figure out how to use the software to actually make what we want to make.
yep,
So
yep.
there's so much, like, you can spend an entire lifetime like doing just that specific thing, which is amazing how
Uh,
people.
the funny thing is, everyone hears of 3D printing, and like I said, it's slow. We have 12 3D printers here, and
Mhm.
if I get a project done, I'll just run all 12 of them.
Yeah.
Still takes a long time to get everything done. But
Yes.
the laser cutter, that laser cutter, if you get good at the laser cutter, so you know how to
Mhm.
use the software and you can get it to do what you want, which is not
Mhm.
a very hard skill. You could learn that in a weekend. and you know where there's a Dollar Tree store that sells foam board, dollar foam board, and a scale with a laser cutter, and like the whole world is your oyster. There's like almost nothing you
Oh my
can't solve
God.
that. And we make everything. We're so spoiled that like
Mhm.
I see people cut a piece of paper in half on the laser cutter because it was like, you know, like a two coupon thing, like a flyer that has like a top and a bottom, and they're cutting it in half. And I'm like, you know, we've got a paper cutter here, right? Scissors, numbers. And they're like, why? Why would I ever stoop to like hand tools when I've got the laser? All right, okay.
That's too funny. That is
Yeah,
too
but we
funny.
love it. I mean, we build drones out of foam board on the
Mhm.
laser cutter and tons of cosplay stuff.
Oh wow.
My
Nice.
wife, so at some point, I don't know what I make a mistake sometimes of letting my wife know what the laser cutter can do. And I remember I told her like, I could do our wedding invitations on that. She's like, cool, do it. And I was excited about it, so I thought it through, and I was like, all right, so it takes 20 minutes to make one invitation, and I
Mhm.
have like 200 of these things. I'm just gonna live here. And recently, uh, I did an engraving on a cutting board, and she thought it was really pretty. And so every time there's a wedding or a celebration somewhere, she just gives me a cutting board. I'll come to, you know, I'll wake up in the morning, I'll get ready to go to work. She's already gone, and there'll
Mhm.
be a cutting board sitting on the counter that says like, "This one's for so and so. Make it say this."
Oh my God.
I'm running like a side business doing wedding cutting board gifts.
So when you say cutting board, which kind is this?
You know those like wooden cutting boards for like kitchen work?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Okay,
You know,
okay.
so like, you know, you chop onions on it or whatever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're like $25 at Bed Bath
Mhm.
and Beyond, and she
Mhm.
grabs them. She should probably grab them in bulk at this point, and she just
Mhm.
put a sticky note on it. I feel like I'm a cake decorator, like "Happy birthday, Julia," and whatever. And so, you know, whip it out. And the problem is, like, everything we've talked about, right? Like, none of
Mhm.
us are like, oh, I'll just engrave their names and the date on it. That'll be
Yeah.
easy. No,
Yeah.
no,
No.
30-foot wings. That's how we do it. So I'm like, let me look up some stuff on the internet about them, and oh, they're
Nice.
into this sort of stuff. Let me find that character from the movie that does that. So I'm
Yeah.
like killing myself, and she
Mhm.
doesn't do this to me, right? She didn't
Mhm.
say to do that. She's like, give
No.
him the name and the date, but
Yeah.
I phone up, and every time I give one back to her, it's funny because she knows what's coming by now. She
Yeah.
looks at it like, what is this? And she sees it. She goes, all right. You know, don't complain to me about how hard these are. Because hard. This was 3 minutes and you know it.
Mhm. So you're engraving cutting boards on the laser cutter.
Yep, that's right.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Context. All right. Perfect, man. This was really really fun. I need to come visit you, and check out the space even more, and
Yeah.
spend some time, get some volunteer hours in, and
Yeah. And to all your listeners out there on the interwebs,
yes,
maker spaces are prevalent all over the world. Definitely go check one out. Definitely bring your friends and family. It's a great way to kind of expand your horizons. And I think there's something for everyone at maker spaces,
that's
even if
true.
it's not an everyday thing or a podcast career path for you.
Exactly.
There's a great experience out there, and check it out. The other thing is, if you're in the area, NoVA Labs is open every day. We're giving tours on Wednesdays. We do open houses on weekends, on Sundays usually. Check out our
Nice.
meetup page, meetup.com/NoVA-makers. And additionally,
Nice.
there's a big festival coming up June 2nd called the NoVA Maker Fair. It's going to be at
Nice.
George Mason University. Check that out online, the NoVA Maker Fair. And it's going to be a huge multi-building event, like 3 to 4 thousand people. And they
Wow.
all are just a bunch of makers who show up and have booths and show off some crazy projects they've made. So
Nice.
36-foot winged Pegasus floats is a crazy thing. Just wait. They've got some crazy, crazy things.
Very cool, man. So one of the things that I ask my guests is a few questions, and the number one question was tell us your story and your journey. The number two question is what is what is, and this question is very funny. So the question is, what is one hobby that you wish you got into?
Shoot, man. Like I was talking about all those crazy things. Like before I picked engineering, I was studying to be a psychiatrist, an
Hmm.
oceanographer, software developer, a pilot. Like I'd done a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
I think the thing that I haven't done, like it's because I don't know it exists.
Hmm.
I've tried everything I'm interested in, and I will still to this very day, like
Yeah.
pretty hard if I'm like, did you see this new sport people play? I've never even heard of it. I'm gonna get into it. It's called frisbee golf, and like you go up in the mountains, you throw frisbees everywhere. All right, let's see how that plays out. So yeah, I do a lot of stuff. I live a very
Nice.
fulfilling life, and I'm super happy and lucky. I know how lucky I am to be able to do that. And yeah, if there's a cool thing you know about, I'm willing to check it out.
You either have already done it or would love to try it.
Love to try. Yeah, kite surfing is my new one. I've never been kite surfing, and I just had my birthday in the beginning of May, and I told my wife, I was like, kite surfing, it's the thing. I've decided I'm going to do it. It's funny to see all these half-made projects around the house, but to some degree, they're kind of the saving grace, because she's like, please, oh please, let him go kite surfing once and decide it's not for him before we have a house full of kite surfing gear, whatever else he's into.
Oh man,
we don't need to deal with.
I hear you. All right, so the next question is, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Shoot, man. So I love media. I love content.
Mm-hmm.
I read books. I watch TV. I watch movies. I usually try and pick. Like if I'm in front of the TV for more than 2 minutes and I don't see something I want, I don't keep surfing. I'm done. And I don't actually watch regular cable TV. I think that's a monstrosity to your attention and your value. So I only watch like digital stuff. So online, I have all the accounts, right? The Netflix, the HBO Go. I have all those accounts. So I can pick what I want, and it's worth my time, and I enjoy it. So for TV, I think I gave you a little list. Did I? I don't remember.
Yes, that list is. I have it. I mean, I don't.
Yeah. Well, so I could, if I named like my 3 favorite TV shows, 3 favorite movies, 3 favorite books now, they'd be totally different from the list you have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's. I've always seen that happen.
Okay.
But go ahead.
So I mean, I don't know. I like so much stuff. I dabble in almost everything. Like I like everything.
If you were to pick just one movie.
One movie. And okay, so like everything, it's about the audience. So if I'm going to recommend, is it my favorite for me or for recommending to someone else?
No, this is favorite for you yourself. You would see this all the time.
Boy, so I do love the big action picks. I love like an Inception, but I think I want something a little deeper. So I'm going to go with Gattaca. Gattaca's my favorite.
That is so deep. So deep.
It's so true, and every day it gets truer. I feel like people will watch it 25 years from now and be like, they saw this coming. How did they not do it? People thought this was a sci-fi. Like,
this is real life. This is what we're doing now.
Yeah, and I do love. So I've got a couple of like deep passions for a good zombie movie and a good time travel movie. Those two, like, there's no time travel movie or zombie movie I won't watch.
Well, I don't want to give it away, but by the time this episode is out, I'm hoping everybody's already seen Endgame.
No, I haven't. Don't do it. Whatever you're about to do.
I'm not going to do it. Okay, I'm going to do it.
And I haven't done it because there's like 173,000 Marvel movies you have to watch to get to Endgame, right? And like I don't have the time for that. And so I hadn't
you're right. Okay.
A couple of the big ones I'd seen, right? And
yeah.
So I was like, dude, like it's over now, so I feel like I can at least commit to it, knowing there's an end point, and I'm not supposed to be wasting the rest of my life watching Marvel.
Sure. I guess you could say that.
This like giant infographic of all the movies ordered here, so you can watch them in an order that makes sense. And cranking through these things, and they're good. At least for the most part, they're good. I don't know how many Spider-Mans you need to see before you get the idea, but okay. So, I'm going through and I'm watching all these, and I was like, all right, cool. Like this Endgame's coming out. I'm going to be able to see all of these, and then well, it turns out the one before Endgame that you have to watch before Endgame isn't out yet, which is Captain Marvel.
Yes, so I'm Captain Marvel is coming on DVD soon. Yeah.
So I think I have to buy it in order to see it soon enough to be able to go to theater and see Endgame in the theater.
Captain Marvel's in theaters right now.
Is it still?
Yeah. Should be.
All right. Well, maybe it's double feature time. Maybe I gotta close the book on this one with a bang.
There you go.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. I had plans this weekend, but apparently that's what I'm doing now.
You're welcome. All right. Okay. Last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
A board game. All right. So I got. What don't I like? I'm a guy who's into stuff. I like board games. I don't really like the classic like Monopoly stuff. I think they're too simple. Like I went to engineering school. I like math. I like a game that's got some meat to it.
Mm-hmm.
And those are very procedural. You roll dice, you land on stuff, you buy it. Kind of boring.
Yeah.
Like these, people don't always know. They think like, all right, there's Monopoly and Parcheesi and whatever, and then there's like Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
But there's actually this huge spectrum of like board games. And if you've ever heard of like, what is it, Carcassonne, or what's the Catan, right? So these are some like very well known in terms of those kind of board games. If you've heard of that, you know that that's a genre. So they have a game night here on Friday nights, and if my wife's out of town, because Friday night's usually date night, I get to hang out and play board games.
Yeah.
And see all these crazy games that are super fun. So as the prerequisite, so board games I like are going to be ones that people have probably not heard of, unless you're into board games, right?
Yeah.
I guess there's one that just came out that I like, and it's called, oh boy, it's called Quacks of Quixonagle or something like that. It's got two Q's in it. And you're essentially a wizard who makes potions, like magic potions. Suck at it. You're like an apprentice and you're terrible, right? You're like the Mickey Mouse apprentice from Fantasia. You're like, I got this spell that makes brooms come to life and now everything's flooding and I don't know what's happening. So you essentially go through making spells and blowing stuff up constantly. And it's a cute game and it plays quick and the rules are pretty straightforward, but it's not so obvious that like it's not shoots and ladders where like you obviously are making.
Is it called Quacks of Quedlinburg?
That sounds like it's exactly what it's called. I don't think there's two games that are called that. Google it. Yeah, that's it. It just came out. A friend got it at a conference. They do board game conferences for that group.
Nice.
Brought it back.
I think I saw somebody play that game on Tuesday night when I was visiting.
Maybe. Yeah, it's brand new. In fact, that guy who has it here had to order it from like Europe because they had a pre-order and it's so hard to get the game that like some people like bought them like ticket scalpers. They like bought them to resell it, and like it was so hard to get one that wasn't like $200 in from Europe.
That's always a problem, man. There's so many topics, there's so many tangents that we can go off from this. It's amazing. I love it. Bo, thank you so much for your time, man. This was so much fun. I can't wait to come visit NoVA Labs and, start working on some of these projects that I have sitting in my workshop and, get them done. And,
it's funny. The timing is so funny. This is why this place is crazy. So we're finishing up right now, wrapping up. We're going to go on and do our things. The UPS guy just showed up and he's got giant boxes of stuff. And I know what's in them because I ordered them. And ooh, a new project. All right. Well, great talking to you. I'm going to go build some stuff. My life. And,
so cool. So cool. Well, thank you so much again. I definitely want to build some things using the laser cutter and foam board. You probably know Adam Savage, right? And he had a project where he built his childhood home using foam core. It was like one of the one-day builds.
I hope it wasn't 1-to-1 scale.
It was not 1-to-1 scale. It was, but it was a lot of fun. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. I want to do that.
That's so funny. So funny. That is the kind of thing that someone would do here. And it's one of those things I'd never thought about. And remember you were asking me like, what would you do? And like, I haven't heard of it. I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. And now that you mention it, it sounds pretty cool.
Absolutely. And Adam Savage, he's from Mythbusters and he's got an amazing workshop and he's like constantly working on some really crazy stuff all the time. And then he's got his own video channel. So I was like, what if NoVA Labs had a video channel?
Yeah.
And filming stuff. So if I were out there, I would love to do that for NoVA Labs because that's some of my passion with video production and whatnot.
Well, I'm here all the time. Next time you're in, if you can give me a heads up ahead of time or just make sure, when you're here, you say hi and we'll talk because I'd love to.
Yeah, for sure, man. Awesome. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
You too. Bye. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the episode. Thanks so much for listening to our guest on this episode. Please send me an email at junaid@hacksandhobbies.com to tell me what you loved about our guest today. You could find links mentioned in this episode on the hacksandhobbies.com website.